Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate having each and every one of you. So we're BURNPIT 360 Veterans Organization. We're out of Texas, Corpus Christi. We're really glad to be here and honored that the Congressman, one, is really championing the issue, and two, that he invited us to be here because it's such an important issue to him. Yeah. Okay, so who is BURNPIT 360? So here's just a picture of some of the fallen heroes and one of the families of one of the sergeants who died as a result of it. So we just start with that slide to honor our fallen heroes, and we can go to the next slide. So I'll tell you a little bit about our story. We founded our organization in 2010. My husband, retired Army Captain Leroy Torres, deployed to Balad in 2007. He served as a state trooper for 14 years in the state of Texas. And so as he suffers from complications from illnesses, and again, after experiencing a lot of probably what you all are experiencing is the delay, the denial, and the ineffective treatment, we founded BURNPIT 360. For him, it was a lung disease. So him being a state trooper, his employer really needed to know what was causing his respiratory issues. So after going to the VA and going to a lot of the DoD healthcare facilities and not able to get any true answers other than it was all in his head, we did see a doctor in Vanderbilt University who had already done a study on over 60 soldiers from Fort Campbell who had already been diagnosed with this terminal lung disease, where he eventually was diagnosed with the same issue. Go ahead. And again, our mission is to reintegrate, restore, and build resilience by facilitating the unmet needs of warriors and their families through outreach, education, research, advocacy. And so this just talks about our vision, to empower and provide online and in-person resources for survival through training, peer support, case management, and any referrals to, organizations that are already in the community. Our headquarters, which we're now opening up, is in Corpus. It's called the BURNPIT 360 Warrior Support Center, where we will facilitate training and information, one, specific to the veterans' needs, and two, on deployment-related exposures, such as burn pits. Go ahead. So what is the burn pit? The U.S. military hired government contractors to dispose of waste on military bases during the Iraq and Afghanistan war conflicts. Open-air burn pits were devoted to open-air combustion burning of trash doused with jet fuel, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. At Balad, where my husband was, trash being burned daily was 227 metric tons. So I just put this little formula, right? Hazardous waste, jet fuel, toxic exposure. You want to play the video? I don't know if you can see that very well. Can we hit the lights? I was wondering if maybe we'll play it again, but that way you can see it a little better. No? Okay, don't worry about it. That's okay. I just wanted to see if you could get a better view. But so that's a burn pit at BAGRAM Air Force Base. And you could see the smoke plume going directly to where the living quarters are of where our servicemen and women were deployed to. Open-air burn pits and deployment-related toxic exposures. During Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom Wars, government contractors burned up to 27 metric tons at the forward operating bases. Items burned included batteries, medical waste, amputated body parts from the surgeries at the hospitals, ammunition, human waste, animal carcasses, rubber, chemicals, all kinds of stuff, everything. So everything that here in where we live, that we have to follow EPA rule, everything that's segregated and safely disposed of, that didn't happen in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was all burned. So, and you saw the smoke plume. The devastating health conditions suffered by veterans exposed, these are some of the issues, some of the diseases and symptoms that we've identified through our registry: neurological disorders, pulmonary diseases, rare forms of cancer, unexplained symptoms, and even death. There have been thousands of deaths resulting from the invisible wounds of war, such as toxic exposure, PTSD, different issues. Here, This is just some statistics. Possible veterans affected, 3.5 million. Our organization advocated for a national registry. All the families got together, went to Washington, and we were finally successful in getting President Obama to sign a bill into law that required the VA to publish a national registry where, you know, our service members can go and register. The downside to that registry is you can't register, you can't submit a death entry by proxy. So if your loved one dies and you believe it's a result of exposure, you cannot go on the VA registry and register your loved one. It's not an option. It's not open to track the mortality rate at all. We have addressed this to them. Nothing's being done as of yet. I'll go back, sorry. Our organization does manage our own registry for the purpose of being able to go to members of Congress with statistics that we have control over, data that we control and that we can present, so that we can create change. On our registry, we have over 100 death entries, and they're all, I think we have 3 suicides as a result of the loss, the health decline, but the other 98 or 97 are a result of cancer. So where we live, the total number of registrants on the National VA Registry are 11,158. Keep in mind, Texas is the is the state with the second largest veteran population, and California is the first. Right? You all have the highest veteran population in the state of California. So if you want information of how many are registered from the state of California, you know, we can provide that at a later date, or you can go on our website. I'm going to take off my jacket. Yeah, but no, go. So here are just some of the items burned that I went over. Oh, no, never mind. Hold on. Sorry. I hope I didn't mess that up with the sound. Some of the items burned. So here's some pictures that have been submitted to our organization on behalf of you know, service members that were deployed there. I've even received pictures from environmental engineers that did work for CENTCOM, have now retired, and really feel the need to get this awareness out there. So we have hazardous waste, solvents, unexploded ordnance, batteries, tires, plastics, medical waste, human waste, unused pharmaceuticals, all that I talked about a few minutes ago. So, like I said, these are submitted to us. Those are batteries. These are just all kinds of hazardous waste that, these were pictures from the environmental engineers that were in charge of overseeing all the burn pits at all the FOBs. Go ahead. So I think these pictures speak for themselves. I'll go back. There. You see all the ammunition, all the waste, everything's just, you know. Go ahead. So this is just like medical waste. You could see like the needles and the tubes, the blood, where they do blood draws and all of those things. These are the incinerators that we're supposed to be using, that they were supposed to be using at the bases. Some of those environmental engineers that worked for CENTCOM that are now retired called me and said that the contractors didn't utilize those because they were more expensive to operate them than they were to burn them, than to burn the trash. And then the turnaround time on ordering a part, not the turnaround time, the cost of ordering a part for them was more of a loss than for them to have kept our servicemen and women safe and actually operated what was already there. So you have millions of dollars sitting on these bases, they weren't being used. Okay. Here's the VA burn pit registry that I mentioned earlier that we advocated for. Again, I mean, after, well, I'll talk about that later, but here's the registry. The Airborne Hazards and Open Burn Pit Registry is a database of health-related information about veterans and service members. Individuals may participate by completing an online questionnaire about their symptoms, health conditions, environmental and work-related exposures, and healthcare usage. So eligibility is any veteran or service member who served in OEF, OIF, OND, or in Djibouti, Africa, after September 11, 2001, or Operation Desert Shield or Desert Storm, or the Southwest Asia Theater of Operations after August 2nd, 1990. So I do know that they were tweaking it so that they opened up the eligibility for, you know, a different criteria, because there's some theaters that they weren't allowing to submit an entry. I do encourage everyone to participate in this only because it helps us push Congress to do more and push the VA to say, so right now I think there's only like 112,000 registered, 117,000. When it is working, that's not all the time, because most of the time I've been told that it's down. But when it is working, I do encourage everyone so that if they just see 117,000 people that are sick, that's not enough for them. They just feel that that, you know, isn't a number to justify the need for a list of presumptives at a future date. But so if you go on the publichealth.va.gov, you also learn about other exposures if you were in other war campaigns or whatnot. But that's a really good website. We do work with the VA National Public Health staff in Washington. They've been very open about submitting information to us, so we're grateful for that. We want to keep that open dialogue with them.
What was that website?
Oh, sure. It's, well, so actually if you just type in VA BURNPIT registry, it'll take you to https://veteran.mobilehealth.va.gov and then /AH BURNPIT registry. But like I said, if you just Google VA BURNPIT registry, it'll take you there directly. So I given a presentation at a VA symposium in Washington. They invite us every year. So this is, I just kind of took a sheet from what I talked about there, the problem with the VA BURNPIT registry, and then this is their exam. There actually is an exam that goes with the registry, so you all know. If they say they don't know, they need to know, and they should be learning, and they should be offering it to everyone. Because I have confirmed with the VA Office of Public Health if this does exist, and they said yes. So patients unable to schedule exam due to environmental coordinators having no knowledge of who or how to schedule the exam. This is something we brought to their attention. Veterans are being offered the Gulf War exam and given another form in which they write Gulf War exam, and that's not the same thing. We have been conducting an independent assessment of this issue and have confirmed that environmental coordinators are not aware of the process. So from January 2012 to the present, our search for the ward burn pits registry airborne hazards yields no press releases for the issue of burn pits. We ran a search for the same time frame on PTSD, which yielded over 30 press releases. Well, what does that tell you? That they don't really care about the issue. So, but we're working hard with them to make sure that there's some accountability there. The VA burn pit exam, here's a handout that the VA has. I think I've only really seen this at their facility in Washington. I don't really see this at every VA, which I feel that it should be handed out at every VA. And then it just gives you a breakdown on what the medical evaluation is, and then what the next step is for you if you want to have the exam done. So we can, if you sign up on our newsletter and you want information like this, we can send it to you, or we can definitely provide the congressman with the same handouts if you all want to, you know, reach out that way. I don't really know, I don't want to speak for the congressman, I'm sorry, but we can provide y'all with stuff, resources, you know, or go to your VA and ask for it, you know, just ask for the VA burn pit exam. And like I said, you can go on the link, you'll find the same handout, or you can go on our website. So this document right here is called the VA Environmental Training Letter. It's 26 pages long. But let me tell you, if you're trying to navigate and access healthcare, if you're trying to connect the dots and there's all this denial, this is the letter you need to take to every emergency room visit, to every doctor's office, to every specialist. You make 100 copies if you can, because you'll need it. So this letter was actually, so the subject line says, environmental hazards in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other military installations. It was developed for VA adjudicators to make decisions on compensation ratings. I assume the letter was leaked and it got in the hands of everyone. So I think it's one of the most important tools to have when trying to access specialized healthcare. Why? Because on page 3 to 6, it actually identifies the chemicals that were detected in the air sampling, specifically at Balad. If you look at some of the chemicals listed, you have acrolein, benzene, fluorine, pyrene. That is why people are dying, because of all the chemical exposure. These are the dioxins. You can't ignore them. It's their own letter, you know. This is a VA letter that was developed. So like I said, for us and my family, it has really helped us justify the truth that there is a possible association, according to them, between your illnesses, unexplained illnesses, and the exposures. So on our website, you can find this letter, or if you'd like, sign up on our sign-up sheet, and if you're requesting one, we can email you one. But I highly recommend this being one of the most important documents in navigating the healthcare system. Go ahead. So we have our own registry, which I talked about a few minutes ago. BURNPIT 360 established our registry in 2010 to monitor the health of service members and veterans exposed to open-air burn pits. Our registry allows eligible veterans and service members to document their exposures, report health concerns, submit updated health and death entries through an online questionnaire that allows us to track changes in physical and mental health over time, gaps in care, and denial of VA benefits. So, like I mentioned earlier, the National VA Registry, you can't submit a decline in health function and you can't submit a death entry, which is why it's really important that you register for both. Our registry is a comprehensive and confidential voluntary health survey that will allow us to better understand the health outcomes of our servicemen and women exposed to hazards. The data collected through our registry will allow us to collaborate with independent researchers and institutions to track and investigate illness, recovery, and deaths. So, like I mentioned earlier, BURNPIT 360 registry does include over 100 death entries. And the death entries reported include both cancers and suicide, which I talked about earlier. Go back. Some of the cancers, so what I did is I took some of the cancers that were identified through our registry, through the death registry. So anybody that submits a death entry, any family member, I took some of those that were most prevalent and I identified them here. So glioblastomas, brain cancers, renal cell carcinoma, esophageal cancers, lung cancers, throat cancers, soft tissue sarcomas, pancreatic cancer, squamous cell mouth cancer, all kinds of very, like 1 in a million cancers that are not, when they're tested for genetics, which most of these families have tested, they're not genetically connected. They're connected to an exposure. The hard part is identifying which one of those carcinogens cause what, you know. So, okay. And if I'm going too fast, please tell me. I'll slow down. These two memorandums, so it all started because one of the colonels that was doing an air quality assessment at Balad said it was one of the worst environmental cesspools he had ever you know, conducted an air assessment on. So he published his air quality summary, and that's sort of what kind of let the cat out of the bag. But that one and BAGRAM, these are two air quality summaries that I think every soldier was supposed to receive, not to guarantee compensation, but just to say there's a possibility that later on down the line you could suffer from some kind of illness or disease. So we have those two. You know, we're putting together a post-deployment health guide, and we're hoping to have these really important documents there for you to have when you're trying to navigate for your benefits and your health care. Okay, so the only healthcare providers that we know of that do specialize and do recognize and acknowledge that these illnesses are not psychosomatic, that they're real, that you coming into the ER for an unexplained, disease or symptom could possibly be connected. So Dr. Miller at Vanderbilt University, he was hired by the Army to conduct a study on 60-something soldiers out of Fort Campbell. They couldn't breathe. A lot of these soldiers were top-notch special forces. They were like the top of the top, but couldn't breathe. The lung disease that he discovered, he could only diagnose through a lung biopsy. So every pulmonary function test was coming back normal, every chest x-ray was coming back normal. And so he opted to conduct an open VATS, which is an invasive surgery, on every soldier. They all consented, and it came back that they are suffering from a terminal lung disease due to toxic inhalation. He is also my husband's doctor. So that is where my husband received his confirmed diagnosis of the same lung disease as the other soldiers at Fort Campbell. That's where he comes into the picture, and he's a huge advocate for those suffering with respiratory issues that don't have an answer, that keep being told that it's asthma, and when you have an inhaler, that doesn't solve the issue. So it's not asthma. We know that it has to do with exposure. Dr. Alan Harris, she's also an amazing pulmonologist over at the VA in Jackson, Mississippi. If you're not having any luck at your local VA, with your local VA pulmonologist, reach out to Dr. Harris at the Jackson, Mississippi, and try to coordinate that care between your local pulmonologist and her, because she's very proactive with the issue. Dr. Anthony Zema, he's an allergist who's also, well, he carries a lot of titles, but anyway, he's done a lot of biopsies as well. His discovery is that a lot of soldiers are coming back with titanium in their lungs, metals in their lungs, and he's also done a study. Dr. Meehan's, I'm sorry, I put the wrong healthcare facility. Dr. Meehan is over at National Jewish in Colorado. And him and Dr. Cecile Rose have conducted thorough research on the lung issues, and then they do validate through their research that there is some association. But you can find all of their information at burnpits360.org. We do have that info up there. So in regards to compensation, I have to say that everyone that has filed, most people that file receive a denial, but those that have enough proof from your doctor, to prove the correlation between the exposure and the illness, if you're that lucky to get that doctor to write something, then you see a compensation there. You see a compensation granted connecting the two. But most people are coming back because there's no list of presumptives, they're coming back being denied. I just gave an example of a veteran who she submitted to me. Her doctor filled out a DBQ. It's VA form 210960L1, and that is for the lung disease. So, if you're suffering from lung issues, have your doctor fill out a DBQ and submit it with your paperwork. But anyway, she was awarded 100%. If you see the condition, it's Iraq-Afghanistan war lung injury, also claimed as constrictive bronchiolitis, which is the same disease Dr. Miller gave a diagnosis for. So her doctor, which is Dr. Alan Harris, was able to get her, her compensation. So the goal for us is to have a list of presumptives for the one disease that's already been proven. So, okay, go. Here's some of the illnesses and symptoms. You can find this on our website. Cancers, cardiology issues, neurological issues, infectious diseases, pulmonary, gastrointestinal, rashes. For the cancers, I went over those earlier, but a lot of, just a whole bunch of stuff that is like a lot of things that are happening. But what I did is I took these illnesses from what's being reported through our registry. I didn't just make these up or take them from somewhere. I took the data that's on our registry and I put some on here just so people can know that, these are things that are being reported by over 6,000 entries that we have. Okay. The war lung injury, so Dr. Zema, this article is the proposed Iraq-Afghanistan war lung injury clinical practice recommendations. So if you're interested in accessing this, there's the link. But this was the study proving the connection between the exposure and the lung disease. Okay. For research efforts, the EPA has already determined that burning waste causes health problems, so we just kind of put that archive in there. Congress should insist veterans receive disability benefits and health care for illnesses already scientifically associated with exposure to burning trash and airborne hazards with the presumptive. Okay, you can go to the next one. So we know it's a national crisis, right? They've had a traumatic impact on the lives of many. Many deaths being reported, and the uncertainty of the health impacts of the exposure should not circumvent the requirements needed to address the health conditions. Here are some recommendations to the VA. We've already submitted those to them. Allow death entry, conduct a national outreach campaign, develop an independent study, because when the study came back from this national registry, it came back inconclusive. There's not enough proof. They need 20 more years of research for them to prove that there's any connection. So although there are people being service connected for the issue, it contradicts the training letter and it contradicts the service connections. So I don't understand. I mean, it's really, we promote the collection of valid information, participation in the registry, the use of the registry. The idea that okay, so what we had a problem with what they came back is that they don't want to use the data for valid information, to justify that there's a connection, but they want to use it as a guide to guide them when they're practicing medicine and assessing exposures. So I don't really know. There's just a lot of things going back and forth. Okay, you can go. So this is just really, I broke this little graph. What we're seeing is, these are the things we're asking for: specialized health care, compensation, research, benefits. But as a result of all this, you see the financial hardship, the suicides, the loss of employment on the civilian and the military side. So there's a lot to be done, and none of it's happening because there's just this denial and this delay, which you saw in the documentary. Okay, so for our outreach, we had a congressional briefing in 2017, and that went okay. We're hoping to have one in 2018 in Washington to brief members of Congress on the issue. The fact that we only have Congressman Ruiz and Congressman Castro, and I think Senator Klobuchar and a few other members of Congress, that's not enough. We really need every elected official that we put into office to do their job and to help these servicemen and women that are coming back dying and suffering. We're developing a post-deployment resource guide that'll be available on our new website here in the next month. We're doing podcasts, newsletters, we have the registry, and we're opening up our first headquarters in Texas, which is the BURNPIT 360 Warrior Support Center. We have a letter out there that you can sign now to give to your congressman, and this is just a letter identifying the asks that the goal is to get Congress to grant us a hearing, to get VA Secretary Shulkin to add the lung disease to the list of the disability criteria. So I want to touch a little bit on this. The lung disease that these soldiers are being diagnosed with and coming back with, it's not on the list of the Code of Federal Regulations, so there's no compensation for it unless you're one of the few that are lucky to get it, but you have to find your way around it, if that makes any sense. So because it's not identified on the list, there's no category for it on the list of VA presumptives, so you get nothing unless your doctor writes a specific letter that your lung disease is caused by toxins. So this letter you can sign today. We'll hand over to Congressman Ruiz, And it's here to just really get all members of Congress to step up and join Congressman Ruiz in his leadership. The impact summary, this just talks about what we've done. We lobbied for the National Burn Pit Registry, which I already talked about. We attended a symposium. We introduced a Texas House bill for a Texas Burn Pit Registry, just to put more pressure on a federal level. And just, a little bit about what we've done, but you can go to the next one. This is from my husband. I'm just going to read it out loud. That's his testimony. He said, "I would like to share my life journey and the lives of thousands of my fellow brothers and sisters and the horrific impact this toxic war has had on our lives. As a man, as a husband, and a father, I have felt stripped of my dignity, my honor, and my health. Imagine returning home from a war only to face a healthcare system that has failed you, an employer too afraid to understand an uncommon war injury, resulting in the end of my career, foreclosure and repossession letters, and denial of VA compensation claims." This was a testimony he gave before the Capitol, retired Captain Torres. And here's a picture of Jen KEPNER, whose birthday is today, by the way. Her husband's sitting here with us. Ben, thank you for joining us. And of course, if...
And the mom.
And your mom. Thank you, Ms. Captain. Thank you for being here. Jen was an amazing, amazing person and advocate. She was one of the very few that when she reached out to Burn Pits 360, didn't say, what can you do for me? She said, help me and just equip me so that I can do the rest. And she was dying in the process of all this. She contacted the media. She called Congressman Ruiz. He came to her home. She did it all. So she was a perfect example of leadership and what we all should be doing and the reason why we do what we do, right? This isn't an organization that started over coffee. This is our lives. And she's one of the reasons why, we're pushing so hard. So thank you, Ben and Ms. KEPNER, for being here and for allowing us to honor her. Okay. These are some other families of the fallen. Fred Slape, his wife Diane, and her daughter. Fred came back from Iraq and then, not immediately, but about a couple of years later, started experiencing headaches. And then when Diane took him into the hospital, they diagnosed him with the same brain cancer as Vice President Biden's son, which is the glioblastoma. When they took out the tumor, 3 more came back in its place. They had never seen anything like it. The doctors were puzzled. They didn't understand. So that's what happened to Fred. Brian Badstibner, U.S. Air Force, those are his wife and his twins, 3 boys. He had appendiceal cancer, and a lot of people from his unit have died of cancer. Ricky Wasco, he's from California, died of lymphoblastic leukemia. He was 27 years old. Brian was 35. Fred was, I think he was also like early 40s, I think. But Ricky, his dad called me when he was on his deathbed and said, "We need help. No one's helping us. I don't know how I'm going to take care of my granddaughters. Please help." We got the media out there. They reversed the decision. They had initially denied him any connection to the burn pits. After that, he was granted 100% disability. And that's the problem, though. We're a little organization out of Texas, and we need everyone's help. Whether you're military or not military, we need help for these servicemen and women. I'm gonna go to the next. So these are children of fallen hero Master Sergeant Brian Badstibner. His wife had this picture taken. The baby's wearing his combat boots, and I don't know if you can see it, but then there's his flag. And I just added that. This is what I presented at the VA symposium in Washington. At this symposium before a lot of leaders in DC, but I put that picture because I really wanted them to feel the impact of what this is all about and if they had any questions. So I kept the same slide. Here's our email, our website, our address. So I'm open for questions if anyone has any questions. Yes, sir.
Obviously, there's somebody in Congress opposing this. What are their excuses?
Patrick, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe what,
What excuses for what?
oh, Congressman Ruiz, I'm sorry.
I
I didn't see you there.
I'm not
We're
prepared.
proposing any measures that would fix these problems.
I didn't know he was sitting there.
So the difficulty here are twofold that I keep running into. One
Okay.
is that to stop this, they want to say two things. One is that we need to purchase incinerators, right? So we don't open this, burn all the garbage in burn pits. And the second is that these commanders, there's a little loophole in the criteria for when to use it where they say, if it is absolutely necessary for war, because we're out there, there's no alternative, we're just moving, and it's for the safety that we just gotta keep moving, we can't be there long term, we can't bring in incinerators, then they have the permission to use this. Now, that's a loophole, right? And it's easy for a commander to say, you know, we needed to use it, so we're gonna use it. The other thing that we keep running into, one of the biggest excuses, is they try to say that the evidence does not show a link between burn pits and cancer, right? Well, I'm a doctor and a scientist, so I read the studies, and the fact of the matter is that there is no good study at all because they didn't even ask the right questions of these studies. So the real thing that we should say is that, yes, but there is no evidence to prove that there is not a link from burn pits and cancer. So those are some issues that we're working on to make sure that they realize what are these issues, so we can do something about it.
Catch-22.
Exactly, but we're gonna put a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, and I know, like, for the past 7 years that we've been advocating, like I said, there's very few members of Congress. As you know, we have Congressman Ruiz, Congressman Castro, Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar, that have been stepping up to really build momentum for the issue, because their constituents are coming forward and saying, you know, my son or daughter died, or my husband or my wife, or is dying. And so I think the more outreach we do as a group and in supporting the congressman, this is the way to success, is to eventually get every member of Congress educated and up to par on the issue. So I just feel like as Americans, we have this moral obligation to give them the right to life, and they're not being given that. They're being denied, delay. And when the VA talks about, I worked for the VA for 23 years, but had to leave my job as a result of my husband getting sick. But when they talk about preventing homelessness and preventing suicides, I mean, this is what results in suicide and in homelessness because of the denial. We are one of those families that almost lost everything we worked for. And we didn't want a handout. We had careers, you know. It's not a life that we chose to have. It's a life that we chose to serve my family and my husband. And I know all of you the same. Sometimes the media will say, well, why did your son join the Army after what happened to your husband? That's not the issue. My husband would leave tomorrow if he could, and I'm sure all of you would too. But the issue is not about blaming. It's about, let's get the accountability to get, you know, the government to provide what they're entitled to. You know, the benefits, compensation, the health care. You know, no one should be walking into any healthcare facility and be told that it's in their head. Like, that is just the most ridiculous thing. That is why you have 22 a day, because they send them away, but making them believe that they're just lying and that they want something, you know. So we'll do our best, and I know Congressman Ruiz is doing an amazing, superb job in championing this issue that is affecting so many. So thank you, Congressman Ruiz, for your leadership. I can't thank you enough. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my son was deployed to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan with the 10th Mountain Division.
Mm-hmm.
And Afghanistan, he was stationed at BAGRAM Air Base
Okay.
in those time periods. Now, he's asymptomatic. He doesn't have any symptoms.
Okay. Okay.
I talked to him, as a matter of fact, today. He lives in Washington State. He's still in the reserve.
Okay.
What can he do, having been there, and does he have to wait till he gets cancer and fly?
You know, my husband and I, we hired a doctor out of Austin, a toxicologist. I took her the list of the dioxins and I asked her the same thing. I said, what are we dealing with? She said, anywhere between 1 and 20 years, any of these service members can develop a malignancy. From what chemical, we'll never know. How long, I don't know, and who, I don't know that either. So yes, she answered I had the same question. So do I just wait around to see when that onset of cancer is going to hit? We already know he has the lung disease that they told him was anxiety. So that's it. That's a reality of this monster.
The
Yes, sir.
important thing is that they register into a registry.
Absolutely.
Because then we collect names, phone numbers, address, and emails.
Mm-hmm.
And that way they can get checkup in terms of like, if as soon as anything happens, they know where to inform. If there's symptoms, they can let them know so they can follow them. That one, that'll help with data, but two, let's say that we change the policy as to when veterans can get their screenings and maybe do them earlier and more frequent so that we can catch certain illnesses sooner than later. Right now, there's nothing other than exercise and good nutrition and you know, taking a lot of antioxidant and other foods and nutritions and support that helps prevent cancer to begin with. But there's nothing you can do necessarily to prevent that mutation in the DNA that causes cancer at that time.
Yeah.
The best thing we can do is to catch it really early, to get rid of it and get it out of the body. And I'm hoping that here we can create a registry, a database, and so we can continue to inform the veterans and their families and their parents or whoever's concerned about them about all these different changes as we work towards them.
Absolutely.
I have
Yes, sir.
one other question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Your letter is great, but it's only coming from you. What if your other veterans organization took that same letter and sent them? In other words, you had all the veterans organizations sending the same letter to Congress only with their letter. Because I'm the treasurer of a veterans charity, I'll put it on my letterhead.
Okay.
Send it to every congressperson.
Sure, absolutely.
And
So,
I can get the United War Veterans Council in New York to do the same thing, because we're associated with them.
yeah, so that's the goal, right? We just threw it on our letterhead to make it available on our website and to whomever wants to have it. But you can definitely take the language that's in there and paste it on yours, you know, apply it to your letterhead, and just get every person from your church, whether they're a veteran or not, and get them to send it to their members of Congress to push for those asks that we've been asking for the past 7 years. But yes, you can use that letter.
We will do that.
Yes, yes, sir.
So the study is for Iraq veterans and pretty much the most recent Desert War. I have a fellow Desert Storm veteran here. We were doing the same thing in the first war over there.
Yeah.
Okay, and it wasn't in just the little cans. We were doing the same thing. So you might want to make them aware as
Yeah.
far as what we're probably going to still go through.
Yes, 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 Congressman Rodriguez, go ahead.
You know, I just want to point out, one of the things that we learned from Jennifer KEPNER was that within the VA, if you do not report your symptoms or your illnesses within the first 5 years after being discharged, then they don't consider that as being, if you develop something later, they won't consider it service related, and they won't treat it. And they might not even give you the benefits for that. And which, you know, is something that really,
We can fight to change that though.
really upset me. So we're currently writing legislation
Okay, good.
to change that.
Okay.
Because, you know, things like PTSD or cancer doesn't come in a nice package within 5 years.
Right.
You know, sometimes there's a delay 10, 12, 20 years later. And they should be getting the care that they need. So that's a legislation, and we're looking at other legislation and policy changes that we're going to write and on behalf of Jennifer KEPNER and our story from that kitchen table conversation that we had a while back.
Wonderful. That's
And one
great.
more thing I want to add, I'm sorry, I don't want to be disrespectful. When you said that PTSD can happen, you know, and anything can trigger PTSD. Anything can also trigger what's going to happen with these burn pots.
Yeah.
You said there was rashes related to that, right? I have rashes
Right.
that came out of nowhere about 4 years ago. They're itchy, they sting, they're annoying, they bubble up. They look like I have chicken pox,
Yeah.
but they're all grouped up.
Right.
And that's probably related to this as well.
Yes.
When my mom died back in 2012, I wasn't allowed to mourn her death. My job told me, get over it. My sister and my brother told, just put me out of their lives because they felt that I wasn't helping out with the situation and I got abandoned. That brought back what I went through with PTSD
Right.
in the first Desert Storm. An isolated situation that nearly cost my life. So it can happen to anybody.
Right,
Don't feel ashamed that you have a problem.
right,
Deal with it. Make the VA deal with it.
right.
Stand up to the VA. Tell them, you'll help me, or you'll regret it. Well, don't say you'll regret it. But, I know a friend, okay, no, don't do that, sorry. But
Don't
just
say
tell
that.
the VA, you're gonna help
Right,
me, one
right,
way or another.
right.
Even if I have to get 50 million lawyers to come after you.
Right, right, yeah,
The VA hopes you give up or you die.
yeah.
And we don't
And those are the
deserve to
two
die.
things. And you don't give up.
No,
Don't
never.
give up.
Don't give up, because let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone who served, including me, has a right to live.
That's right.
Everyone who served, including me, has a right to be successful. You will fight for what you believe in,
Yeah.
because I will help you fight for what you believe in.
Yes.
So Congressman Ruiz, who's probably one of the best representatives that this United States has ever had,
Absolutely,
we will make it through.
yes.
I mean that. Hoo-ah!
Good.
You are.
Yes. Any other questions anyone had? Yes.
I saw the list of everything that you're looking at, but one thing I'm not seeing on there is birth defects. And I
But-
have a lot of exposure, as does my brother. And he has a child that is having unexplained rashes. And I've beat him down to signing up for the registry. But that's one thing I'm just not seeing.
Absolutely, and so I'm glad you brought that point up. I'm so glad. On the death registry, we did have one submission and have had several on fertility and birth defects. That you're right, it's not on the list. And I did not intentionally leave that out. I just, it was a crazy week. But one of the death entries was a father who believes that his child's death was a result of his body being so toxic and full of exposure. Like I said earlier, you have the metals, the titanium in the lungs, the cancers, all that. And so a lot of what happened with Vietnam is happening with the offspring of those coming back from these 2 war campaigns. So yes, and we will make sure to include that in our presentation. But that has been addressed to us as well. I think I have only a minute, no more? That's it? I'm done. Yes? Okay.
I have a real quick question for you. As somebody that used to work at the VA,
Uh-huh.
I'm currently still serving,
Okay.
but I was at BAGRAM. Now to register with the VA, do I need to wait until I'm out?
No, it's for active duty service members as well.
I can still register?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you go out there and
Thank
you
you.
see these burn pits,
Yeah, of course.
take pictures and send them to me.
Send videos. That's a really good one too.
Thank you.
Send
Yeah.
pictures and send them to me. Tell them, tell all your fellow men and women in uniform. Take those pictures and send them to me.
And I think Patrick had something, right?
Yeah,
Patrick?
so my name is Pat, I work for the congressman. So I was at the table that night when the congressman met with Jen and the family, and I'll just kind of back up a little bit. There's something that she said that really struck me, struck home, struck deep. My dad was a foreman in Vietnam with the Marines. He was an FF foreman. He lived his life. He was a police officer. I joined the Marine Corps, everything was fine, and then I was in for about 2 years, and then my dad just got sick. He was 50 years old, couldn't figure out why he got sick, and turned out he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, attributed to orange. And so then I go off to Iraq a couple times, and then I developed some things, and we start talking, and then fast forward some years, and then we met Jen then. Jen said, this is the Agent Orange of our generation. My dad was 50 years old when he got sick. He was a big, strong man all his life. At 50, it was like a switch went off. So I think what Jen was saying and what some other people were saying is that we can't let that happen to us. And we need the help from the Vietnam veterans. We need the younger vets to come out and fight and advocate. You ask what we can do the registry, we could write the letters, we can tell our parents, our friends, we can get our brothers and sisters who we served with to register and to do all we can in memory of Jen, all these men and women who've given their life for this. At the office, we are planning on having some type of talking board because like the Congressman said, we are going to hopefully put up some legislation for it. So I would like, if anybody in here would like to talk with me and I can have your contact information, if you're exposed or you know somebody, I'd love to have your information so we can keep in contact. We can have a listening board, or we can get some ideas, because this is going to be fought by you guys and everybody here in the family. So I'll have a little list up here if you guys want to sign up. So I just want to say thank you so much for Rosie to come out, and Ben and Lisa. You know, you guys are living it and have lived it every day. So it's so important to come out here, spend generous to give that information. So thank you.
Sure.
And thank you all for coming in here today to learn about this.
And can I say one more thing, Patrick? I just encourage everyone to go on our website as well and register for our registry. That'll help us have access to real-time data from our registry and take that to Congress. Let them know how many constituents in their district are affected. And it just gives us an opportunity to access those services a little bit quicker. And like I said, our registry is the only one that offers a death entry, or for you to submit a decline in your health function. So if 1 year you're fine, the next year you're not, you can definitely do that on our registry. So thank you.
And then two things. I would encourage you, if you have the time, to try and watch the BURNPIT movie. You know, when I got back, I had rashes, I had weird coughs, and the Iraqi crud and all that stuff when I was there. But it wasn't until I watched that years later that it was like, oh, maybe it's connected, right? And then you're talking about family members. I have 2 kids who I have one who's a type 1 diabetic. There's no diabetes in my family. I've got a kid with severe asthma. So register, put that in there, so we just start getting that information for them. So,
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.